All right, today we're going to be going through the fuel tank removal and installation on the Polaris RZR 900. We're going to remove the doors first. There's an Allen head up front there by the windshield, and there's a 17mm bolt running through the back part of the door. And then to remove that door, you just lift up. And it takes a little bit of wiggling there just because of how they have that positioned and hooked into the actual floorboard there. Along the bottom side, you've got the 27 Torx, the T27. Then you've got a couple near that seat area there, one in the center console. That's a little bit longer. And then you do have a couple of the pop rivets, plastic rivets that you just remove with either a screwdriver or a side dike. There's roughly 10 of those that you need to remove, and that's including the fender flares as well as underneath of the fuel tank. There's a couple different challenging spots to get to around the fender flares, but once you get those off, you can just separate that panel there completely. Behind those T27 Torx, you're going to have clip nuts, and that just slides onto the plastic piece. I'm going to warn you that if you do have those loosen up, they will just fall right off of that panel, and that creates some issues if you cannot find those. So just make sure that you either have those securely on the panel or just be intentional on removing those when you remove that panel. You do have a T27 in the front there, right behind the front right tire, and that one can sometimes be forgotten about. You don't want to just jerk on that until it comes off of there. You want to make sure you pull that T25 and that panel can be completely removed. It's kind of hidden in behind that fender flare there. Now we're going to go over, open up the driver's side door, remove that seat. There's a latch in the back of that seat. Pull that forward because we are going to have to loosen up that center console. So we are going to pull that back panel so that we can get to those Torx screws that are right underneath of there to remove that console. So you've got two turn clips that hold that engine cover panel off of there, and then we can remove that panel and see the Torx that are underneath of that. Once we get that side panel taken off of there, we are going to have to remove that bottom bolt to pull that seat belt. We also are going to have to remove that bottom rail there that the seat belt hooks mount into, and then we can remove that panel. The reason why you have to remove that bottom seat latch brace is to get that panel off of there. That completely exposes the fuel tank. Now we have a strap that's holding that fuel tank in. We've got two of those straps on this fuel tank. One bolt comes in from the side there where I'm at now, and then we've got a bolt that comes in from the top more underneath the center console. To remove the fuel tank completely, we're going to have to pull the fuel pump fittings and the fuel inlet fittings. So we've got a little clip there that is going to be pressed together that we can just pull that fuel line out of there. That's the inlet there. We've got a vent line for our fuel pump, and then we also have a connector there because there are some electronics involved with that fuel pump. So I'm a little bit in the way here removing these, but it is a little bit of a challenge to pull both of these clips there. Set those aside. We've got a gray clip and then we've got a green clip. We're going to set those out of the way so they don't get damaged. Lift up on that clip there to remove our electrical connector and just push that out. And you will want to make sure you get those hooked up properly going back together. Those fuel lines would be hard to get mixed up if you've got that fuel pump in there the right direction. We've got a green clip there on our what's supposed to be a clear line. We got a pair of pliers, so we're going to loosen up that clamp, and then we're just going to push that vent line off of there. Once you get the straps, the fuel lines, and the electrical connector pulled, you're ready to remove that fuel tank. Lift up and back, and you can pull that fuel tank out. The reason why we're pulling this fuel tank is because of a leak, and somebody had tried to use silicone to fix it. My good buddy from Ace Hardware hooked us up with some Decon Weld It, specifically made for fuel, and we patched it up, spent several days doing that over time, adding a couple different layers. Putting the fuel tank back in there, the most challenging part of that was the strap that holds that fuel tank secure to the frame. It hooks in the front there, and it is challenging to get that to stay while you're trying to get that fuel tank in there. You've got to hook that front portion of it before you can slide that fuel tank in. You've got to keep some pressure on it while you're putting that fuel tank in there so it doesn't unhook itself. So a little bit of a challenge, but we're able to get that in. All right, once we get those straps done and in position there, we can bolt those on. One thing I did forget to mention was that center console there, our cup holder and the cover that goes over top of the shifter. You do have to have that partially removed at least to pull that fuel tank. Putting that under the seat panel on now, you've got to do that before you put the seat buckle bolt back in. You've got to slide that panel underneath of the footwell, and then you can start tightening up some of those components. Before you do this, you can actually hook up the fuel lines. A little bit easier to do that before you put that panel on there, but it is possible to do that after that panel is on there. So hook the fuel lines up, the vent line, and the connector, and then once you get that buckled up there, you can actually install that larger seat buckle lower bolt. So during this time, you can also put those center console bolts back in there. Once that center console is completely buckled up, those under the seat panels, that fuel tank cover is completely buckled up, we can put that seat buckle latch rail back in, held in by a couple bolts on either side there. Snug those up, and then we will be ready to install the side panel there. Going back together, it's just everything in reverse as taking it apart. So as long as you can remember where those T27 bolts were, again, keep in mind that you want to make sure that those nut clips are on there, and so that you don't have issues installing those T27s. They just will never tighten up if you don't have those clips on there. So make sure that those are secure. If you got a couple extra of those, might be good just in case one was dropped somewhere. You can go ahead and snug those up. Those don't actually have to be extremely tight. Those just have to be enough to where they're not going to loosen up. All right, our lower panel is on, our center console is tightened up, our side panel is on, our seat buckle is attached with that bottom bolt there, our seat buckle latch rail is attached with those bolts, and we are ready to put on the engine covers, and then we can install the seats and the doors. To get that panel on there, you slide those over top of the seat buckle latches, and then you've got a grommet there that'll help protect from anything dropping down there, anything that might fall out of your pocket or bouncing around in the cab of your RZR. So you want to make sure you get that grommet on there. It also helps with noise and some heat that could potentially be coming up through there. So make sure you get that secure so you don't have stuff dropping down there. Once that is secure, we can put our gear shifter on, tighten that up with a small Torx bit, and then put the cap on the shifter there. Then we are ready for the doors. We have our Allen bolt in the front there that connects to our roll cage frame. If you've got a windshield, that can add a little bit of a challenge there. We've got our larger bolt in the back. I believe that is a 17 or a 19 millimeter with a nut on there. And then again, the bottom portion of that door is just going to hook on our foot rail there. So no mounting bolts, just kind of a little brace to hold that in position there. Once we get that tightened up, we can throw the seat in. At any point, you can put that seat in there. You can do that before you install those doors. Gives me a little bit of room on that back portion by leaving that seat off of there. You can get in there and tighten up that bolt and nut. A little easier if those seats aren't there. If this video has been helpful, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel if that is helpful to you guys. We appreciate you watching. Any comments or feedback that you can leave would be helpful to us, helps us to know what we need to do different next time, what we can do to help you guys out. Keep your Polaris Ranger or RZR running properly. We do appreciate all that feedback. Thanks a lot for watching.